What's up, everybody? My name's Jason from Night Owls Media, and I am a wedding cinematographer. So today we are going to be talking about my lens choices for a wedding. So I'm going to talk your ear off for a little while about some film theory and some background junk, but if you don't want to hear any of this and just want to jump right to the lenses, jump to this time code. I believe in two things when it comes to filmmaking and all things art, and they are this. Number one, the hammer does not build the table. The carpenter wielding the hammer builds the table. And what that means is your gear is not as important as the person behind the lens, making the choices, making the decisions. I have seen amazing films shot on phones. On the reverse side of that coin, I have seen some real garbage shot on Reds and Aris and these high-end cameras. Without knowing more about theory, they're just shooting and relying on the technology. And you could buy a $200 hammer and it's not going to build you a better table than a $5 hammer unless you know what you're doing. But the tools do make it easier to have what is in our head come out of our head and onto paper, onto the screen. The other thing that I think is invaluable and overlooked most often is the idea of, instead of knowing how things are done, I think we should really focus on why things are done. Because I think once you understand the why, you can do a myriad of different things to get the how. For instance, you don't always have to shoot the shot the same way, especially if the location doesn't call for it. If you can't shoot that same kind of gliding gimbal glider shot in the same location as another location that looked really good and it doesn't look good in the second location, is because you're trying to mimic the same movement and the same how-to rather than why it made you feel that way. And once you understand the why, then you can backtrack and look at how you can make that feeling happen again. The greatest example of this is whenever I teach a film class, I always teach editing first. Because if you just go out and shoot, you're shooting to shoot. And then you get in the editing room and you're like, well, there's so many things that I didn't think about. But if you understand how to edit, you're going to shoot for the edit. And it makes things smoother, it makes things better, and you become a better storyteller because in editing, as Stanley Kubrick said, that's where you can actually tell the story. So today we are going to be talking about my lens choices for a wedding. These aren't going to be in any specific order. I'm just going to grab a lens, tell you what the lens is, and I'm going to tell you why I use this lens. I'm also going to be showing you some sample shots using that lens to kind of express what I'm talking about. Let me preface this whole thing with a very quick story. I'm never going to suggest buying one lens over another just on brand or something like that. I believe the story you're trying to tell, you should do the research and find the lens that works best for that story or for your craft or for your style. You don't all have to buy the exact lenses I have or the same lenses everyone else has just because that's what works for them. If another kind of lens works for you, that's fantastic. Tell the story you want to tell. But I will say this, buy quality lenses to begin with and you'll never have to replace them. You're always going to replace your body, you're always going to replace your lights and your audio gear, but good quality lenses will last you a very long time if you take care of them. The first lens we're going to talk about is the 70-200, and I believe every wedding cinematographer should have a 70-200. I actually have two because I shoot solo, not at weddings anymore. I won't shoot solo weddings, but I do shoot solo events where I need two cross shots of a speaker or something like that, and I need to be far enough away that we're not being seen. And that's what's really important, is a 70-200 allows you to be far enough away that you're not a hindrance or a bother to anyone in the wedding day, that you're not all up in the face during the ceremony and ruining the moment for not only the couple, but for everyone else involved. And it also gives you a really beautiful shallow depth of field. When you're pushing far enough, you get that nice bokeh background, you get the nice blurry background, which makes it feel more fantasy-like and more pretty and more dreamy. And I always suggest having a fast lens because I believe you can do more with it, but it all depends again on the story you're trying to tell. Most of my lenses are 2.8 f-stop. I like that look to them. I do like some that are a little bit faster, and I have some that are a little bit slower, but we'll get to those in a second. The next in my arsenal is probably my oldest lens, a 16-35 2.8. And this has quickly become one of my absolute favorite lenses because it makes everything look epic. I could get a low shot shooting upward and everything just looks more majestic. I can get a cake shot that just feels impressive. And I can also quickly rack to 35 millimeters and then get that perfect eyeline shot. And the reason most people like the 35 millimeter look is because it is the equivalent of how the human being sees everything. Not as wide as we see with our peripheral vision, but more like when we start to focus in on something, that's the length that we see most often. So that's more of like a casual lens, and then the 16 millimeter to like 24, that kind of range makes it feel really wide, but it gives you kind of a very more impressive, more epic feel to all your shots. The next lens in my kit is a 24-70, and this is a Tamron with vibration control and image stabilization. 24-70, 2.8, and I think a 24-70 is a good versatile lens. And it's one of those lenses that everyone says, it'll be on your camera all day. I actually use this a very small portion of my day because I want more control for the look I'm going. And I don't like this range without the other benefits of the other lenses. Mostly for bride and groom prep, especially when the bride's getting in her dress, I'll use this lens because I'm pretty close. I'm also not super close, so I punch into that 70 and I can get those awesome shots. And then I'll pull out really quick when the mom comes in and wants to do up the back, and then I'll rack in really quick when she's doing up the back of the dress, and then when they hug, I rack back out, so it allows me for that quick versatility, especially if I'm the only one shooting in there. Now the next lens I have is a 135 millimeter 2.0, and I absolutely love this lens. A buddy of mine recommended it to me. I rented it and I instantly fell in love with it the moment I put it on my camera. This lens I call my make everyone look beautiful lens because everyone looks amazing with this lens. The bokeh is fantastic. It's super sharp, super clean. This is my lens that I like to use during prep to make the bride just pop on the screen, and it just blows away in that look. It just makes it look so pretty. And I'll also use this lens for a back of the ceremony lens. So usually for a ceremony I have 4 or 5 cameras going, and this is the lens I like to use all the way in the back of the church, of the venue, anything like that, because it allows me to get those really nice close-up shots. Also for the 135, it's a very like fairy tale-esque lens, so I like to throw that lens on if I want things to feel more ethereal, more out of this world, it makes you feel more majestic and more magical. The next lens I use is a Rokinon 85 millimeter, and this is a 1.4 f-stop. I only ever use this for dancing because it allows me to stand outside of the dance floor a little bit, but still feel like I'm in that dance floor, and it'll just destroy the background, kind of focusing on that one little moment in time, making you feel like whoever is shooting this is standing right next to that person, like you're actually in that moment. And I think that's very big for any storyteller, is to bring your audience into the moment with you instead of just watching a spectacle. I believe in a wedding, you should be able to relive it and feel those emotions again. So by actually being in the moment and in that presence, brings your emotions that much higher into it. This is also a good portrait lens, but I don't do portraits or headshots or photography in general. I focus on video only. The next lens I have is a Macro 50. This allows me to get to a 1.8. and it's the Canon 50 macro. This allows me to get those detail shots of the ring shots. The only problem is you have to be very close with this lens, but having a macro I think is extremely important, and I'll use this for the detail shots during the prep session, and then I'll use this for the ring shots during the reception. I'll also throw this on when the bride is getting makeup done, or when the groom's putting on like the small elements, like a tie, or any kind of small elements where I can get really close and kind of feel like the texture of the image. Because again, it's a 50, and 50s are absolutely fantastic. They're one of my favorite lenses and wildly versatile, and it gives just a beautiful, beautiful look to the day. On that note, since I do shoot on Sony cameras, I wanted some Sony lenses for that autofocus, especially during the prep and the first dance and those moments when it's a little more sporadic movement and I don't have total control, or I don't know what's gonna happen next. So I got a 50 1.8 Sony lens, and this allows me to get that autofocus so I can follow a couple around during their creative session and get some really cool shots. I can even get close up on hands, or I can get far away and get like these really pretty shots, but it allows me to blow out the background for that bokeh once I put an ND filter on it. It allows me to have that look that makes me feel like this is quality. This is the look that I want them to remember. While a 35mm I think is beautiful, especially during a creative session, I believe a 50 is that much more pretty, because 35mm is how we remember, 50 is how we want to be remembered. Another lens that I use for the Sony specifically is a 10-18, and this one I typically use for the A6500. And I use this for those really wide shots when I walk into a church and I want to just feel like things are blown way out of proportion and it just feels epic beyond belief. Or if we're in a field and I want it to feel like the field is just enormous. Or if we're in a reception venue and I want to walk in through the doors and you feel the doors burst in and you just see everything. It's so majestic. Or when we're walking down an aisle and you just want to feel the chandeliers and the flowers and it all just feels so encompassing. That's the look I'm going for this. This is kind of like that epic shot look. The last lens I use is the lens I'm shooting on right now. This is a 16-70 and it's a Sony lens. I don't typically use this on a wedding day because this is a 4.0 and I don't like a slow lens like that. That's not the look I like in my films. But I use it for personal stuff. I use it for family stuff. I use it for doing stuff like this. I really enjoy it because 16-70 is a great versatile length, and it allows me to get everything I need in most cases for doing my own personal things. For weddings, I like a lot more control. I like the primes. I like the zooms I have. So the 135, the 16-35, 70-200, and the 50 are my most used lenses throughout the day. I will use them for so much stuff. For example, 16-35 I will also use for the first dance. I get a really low shot so you get that really kind of epic feeling, and then I'll cut into like a tight, intimate shot. And it allows you to feel like the first dance was this epic thing, but also it was this really emotional thing. So I want to connect the emotions, but I also want it to make it feel like it was larger than life. The 135 during a reception allows me to get a lot farther than I can normally, and with that bokeh in the background, it allows it to feel more magical. The 50 is just a fantastic look because it allows me to glide around and get that autofocus. And then the 70-200 I will use for all the toasts. I will use as a third camera for the first dance, but this allows me to get that nice close-up so it's a more intimate moment, especially when the music swells. You eagle-eyed viewers out there might have noticed a subtle change in outfit, or the fact that I've gotten progressively handsomer, because a day and a half has passed since I recorded the last part with all the lenses, and we got a new member to the family, the Canon 100mm macro 2.8, and I am in love with this lens. This has quickly become one of my lenses of choice on a wedding day after filming with it yesterday, and I am just absolutely head over heels in love with this monster of a lens. You can get beautiful daytime creative shots, but you can also get those ring shots that just pop. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me this week. I really appreciate you hanging out with me and letting me talk about lenses. It's fun to talk, even if it's just to my camera. Be on the lookout very shortly. We are doing a documentary series. We have 20 episodes ready to go. It's all about everything couples need to know about their wedding day, on the wedding planning, told from the mouths of some of the leading wedding industry professionals in Chicago to help brides and grooms and couples out about their wedding planning process and hopefully taking away all that stress. So I'm super excited for that to drop. That's coming in July. Be on the lookout for it. Until then, my name's Jason from Night Owls Media. Thank you so much. Today, your job is to do two things. Be better and do something amazing. I want to hear from you. Say something in the comments. I want to know what you're doing today to be better. Until then, take care.